Is Trump dead? The question flooded timelines, lit up hashtags, and echoed through cable panels all weekend. Silence from the White House became gasoline for rumor, and the world leaned in to watch the chaos. But when the doors finally opened, Trump stepped to the podium, steady and sharp. He leaned into the mic and said three words that stopped the frenzy cold. "I'm still here. Stay with us. And if you haven't yet, hit subscribe, because this is the moment the rumor died in silence." A weekend without words turned into a wildfire of whispers. It didn't start with an announcement. It started with silence. For 2 straight days, the man who had once dominated headlines by the hour was absent. No rallies, no quick press sprays, no booming tweets or posts in all caps. For Trump, whose shadow usually stretched across every screen, it was unusual enough to be noticed. For Washington, it was alarming. The first flicker came from a blurry photo, a shot of him stepping out of a car, his right hand wrapped, a faint bruise visible under the skin. The photo was nothing more than a moment caught by a long-lens paparazzo, but by the time it hit Twitter, it became something else entirely. Is he hurt? Why hasn't he been seen? And then the words that would spiral into a digital storm. Is Trump dead? The hashtag launched almost as a joke. A few accounts, a few memes. But within hours, hashtag Trump is dead climbed into trending. Commentators with blue checks retweeted it. Anonymous accounts spun it faster. By midnight, the question wasn't a joke anymore. It was a headline. Cable networks, hungry for weekend content, fanned the flames. Panels asked questions they couldn't answer. Why hasn't he appeared? What do we know about his health? Could there be more? The segments didn't confirm anything, but the repetition gave it weight. Every time a host asked, "Is Trump dead?" the rumor grew another limb. And then came J.D. Vance's words. Standing outside a community center in Ohio, a reporter asked him about continuity in government. He replied offhand, "Every administration has to prepare for tragedy. It's just reality." His tone was casual, his meaning was broad, but by the time the clip hit TikTok, the caption stripped the nuance. VP Vance admits preparing for Trump's death. The speculation metastasized. Blogs lit up with conspiracy theories. Insiders say Trump collapsed on Friday. Secret doctors rushed into the White House. None of it was verified, but verification didn't matter. Screens scrolled, feeds refreshed, and the storm swelled. In diners across the Midwest, phones buzzed with push alerts. In dorm rooms, college students huddled around laptops, watching TikTok after TikTok. In D.C. itself, whispers spread from staffer to staffer. Even those inside the West Wing felt the unease. "He's fine," aides said. "Just wait." But even they couldn't ignore the surge outside the walls. By Sunday night, Google search spikes charted off the scale. "Is Trump dead?" outpaced NFL scores. It wasn't news anymore. It was obsession. And the strangest part wasn't that people believed it. It was that the silence made them want to. The rumor fed itself, a machine powered by nothing but absence. 2 days without Trump felt like 2 weeks, and 2 weeks without him felt like a century. The world wasn't used to his silence. It mistook quiet for a grave. Screens lit up. Then Trump lit up the room. The White House press spray wasn't scheduled. No one had it on their calendars. No morning advisory had hinted at it. But then, suddenly, reporters' phones buzzed. Oval Office availability. Immediate journalists sprinted through the hallways, cameras bouncing against their shoulders, wires trailing behind. The press pool jammed into the Oval Office, the hum of lenses clicking filling the silence. Everyone knew this wasn't routine. If the president was fine, this was the chance to show it. If he wasn't, the rumors might explode. The doors opened. Trump entered. He didn't shuffle. He didn't limp. He walked upright, steady, his jaw tight, his eyes scanning the room with the familiarity of a man who had done this for decades. His tie was knotted tight, his suit pressed, and though the bruise on his hand was faintly visible, the rest of him looked sharp, energized, alive. The room gasped quietly, cameras clicking like machine guns. Some reporters glanced at each other with eyebrows raised, silently asking, "So much for the funeral." Trump stood behind the desk, leaned on the lectern, and before anyone could lob the first question, He spoke. I didn't do any press for 2 days, and they said something must be wrong. Fake news. Totally fake. The words landed like a gavel strike. Nervous chuckles rolled through the room. Even a few hands clapped, though the chairman of the press corps frowned and shook his head. Trump raised his hand, palm out as if silencing the air. I've been very active. More active than most. Believe me, I've had more meetings, more calls, more action than the last 3 presidents put together. Cameras zoomed. The man who had been declared dead on Twitter was standing there, in flesh and voice, mocking the rumor. One reporter shouted, "Mr. President, do you deny the health concerns?" Trump smirked. Deny? There's nothing to deny. I feel great. Better than ever. Never felt better in my life. Gasps, pens scratching, tweets firing out instantly. Never felt better in my life. Within minutes, the line was clipped, captioned, posted, and trending. In the back row, aides exchanged glances. One whispered, "That'll do it." Another, already checking his phone, murmured, "It's already everywhere." But Trump wasn't finished. He leaned closer, his voice lower now, almost conspiratorial. They say I was gone. But the truth is, I've been working harder than ever. If you think I'm done, you're in for a surprise. The chamber buzzed again. Some laughed, others shifted uncomfortably. Reporters scribbled, underlining, "If you think I'm done." The rumor hadn't just been denied. It had been mocked, flipped, and crushed under the weight of his presence. The rumor said absence. His presence made it absurd. That night, the White House buzzed with an unusual energy. Tech CEOs, senators, and a handful of media executives had been invited for a Rose Garden dinner. The kind of event designed to look casual, but crafted to send a message. The sun dipped low, lanterns flickered, and the press cameras were allowed to roll, at least for the opening toast. And then, with a glass of water raised, Trump smiled, letting the chatter die down before speaking. "I know the rumor," he began, his voice even, the smirk tugging at the edge of his mouth. "I know what they're saying. But here's the truth." He paused deliberately, letting the silence hang. "I'm still here." The room cracked. Some laughed nervously, others gasped. Even the CEOs glanced at each other, unsure whether to join in or stay quiet. But Trump didn't need their reaction. He had delivered the line for the cameras. The clip raced out in minutes. 40 seconds of Trump mocking his own obituary. Anchors replayed it with stunned commentary. He didn't just deny it, he mocked it. Headlines crystallized, "Trump turns death rumor into punchline." The contradiction was brutal. Just hours earlier, hashtag screamed "Trump is dead." Now the man himself was smirking, toasting, and spinning it into spectacle. What had been framed as silence became ammunition in his hands, and he pressed the point further. They said I was gone. They said I couldn't speak. And yet, here I am, speaking better than ever. The line earned laughter this time. Not nervous, but genuine. Even some critics in the room couldn't help but smile at the sheer audacity. Reporters furiously tapped quotes into live blogs. One wrote, "Trump trolls death hoax with toast." Another, "Rumor undone by presence." But beyond the words, the optics mattered most. A man rumored dead was walking, talking, joking, turning the narrative upside down with a single phrase. The rumor had promised silence. His voice delivered spectacle. The rumor had owned the weekend. By Monday morning, Trump owned the rumor. Capitol Hill woke up to a different tone. Gone were the whispers in hallways and the quiet questions over coffee. In their place were stunned chuckles, embarrassed shrugs, and the steady hum of screens replaying the same line, "I'm still here." Cable networks, which had stoked the fire just 48 hours earlier, now leaned into the contradiction. CNN opened its hour with a montage. Hashtag screaming #, Trump is dead, fading into Trump himself at the podium. MSNBC anchors admitted the president turned a death hoax into a political moment. Even Fox, who had covered the rumor cautiously, now looped the Oval Office clip with chyrons. Rumor dead, Trump alive. In the House chamber, members shuffled papers nervously. Some who had privately speculated over the weekend avoided eye contact with cameras now. A Republican staffer muttered to his colleague, "We look ridiculous." The colleague nodded, lips pressed tight. On the Democratic side, lawmakers exchanged wry smiles. One whispered, "He killed it with 3 words." Another simply shook her head, as if marveling at how quickly the tide had turned. Reporters who had filled columns with speculation spent the morning writing awkward retractions. "No evidence of health crisis," one headline admitted. Another went further. "Trump weaponizes death hoax." The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The very frenzy meant to weaken him had handed him a stage. At the White House, aides walked with a swagger absent just days earlier. They carried printouts of headlines into staff meetings, pointing at the coverage as proof that the president had flipped the narrative. "He doesn't just survive storms," one said. "He bends them into his own weather." Even late-night shows, which had mocked the rumor with skits and graphics of tombstones, pivoted. One host sighed on air. "Turns out he's not just alive, he's thriving." The audience laughed, but the punchline had already been stolen by Trump himself. And throughout D.C., the silence was noticeable. Pundits who had been loudest over the weekend were suddenly absent from airwaves. Their voices didn't match the new rhythm. The city that had buzzed with gossip now buzzed with unease. Unease that Trump had pulled off something they hadn't expected, turning doubt into dominance. The chamber itself, once thick with rumor, had shifted tone entirely. When Trump's name was mentioned on the floor, it wasn't followed by questions. It was followed by silence. The silence of people who knew they'd been caught leaning into a story that had collapsed in their hands. The Oval Office echoed once. The internet replayed it 1,000,000 times. The 20-second clip wasn't fancy. No polished production, no orchestral score, just a shaky phone video from the press pool posted within minutes of Trump's remark. It showed him leaning toward the mic, smirk tugging at the edge of his mouth, voice crisp. "I'm still here." That was all it took. Twitter detonated. Number sign still here. Trump blasted past number sign, Trump is dead within an hour. TikTok creators stitched the moment into parody clips, overlaying dramatic movie music, slow zooms on Trump's face, captions flashing. Rumor versus reality? Instagram Reels paired the phrase with trending songs. Even YouTube Shorts looped the clip endlessly, racking up millions of views overnight. Cable news couldn't resist. MSNBC led with it, CNN replayed it, and Fox ran it on a loop with commentary. The hoax meets reality. Anchors who had speculated all weekend now leaned into their cameras with sheepish tones. "Well, we are clearly alive." But it wasn't just newsrooms. It was dorm rooms, diners, and offices. College students laughed, recording reaction videos. Workers in New York tuned it on screens over lunch breaks. Farmers scrolling in rural towns replayed the clip on cracked phones. The phrase, "I'm still here," became a punchline, a meme, a mantra. Late-night monologues scrambled to keep up. One comedian quipped, "Reports of Trump's death were greatly exaggerated, mostly by Twitter." The audience laughed, but the clip of Trump himself outperformed any joke. By Monday evening, #StillHere had crossed language barriers. Spanish hashtags popped up. "Sigo aquí." French accounts tweeted. #toujours là. Even foreign broadcasters cut into programming to replay the 3 words. The rumor had gone global, and so had the rebuttal. Meanwhile, DC insiders stared at their phones in disbelief. Some smirked, some groaned, others simply sighed. The consensus was clear. Trump had taken a storm meant to bury him and turned it into free airtime. And still at the center of it all was that one shaky clip. Not a policy speech, not a rally, just 3 words delivered calmly, and the world stopped to watch. The rumor had shouted. The faces whispered the truth. By the 25th minute, Washington wasn't arguing about whether Trump was alive. It was confronting the humiliation of having believed he wasn't. In the oversight chamber, senators shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some who had whispered, "Where is he?" over the weekend now stared at their notes, avoiding cameras. Others pressed lips together, their body language stiff and awkward. A Republican staffer leaned to his colleague, voice caught on a hot mic. "We pushed too far on this." The aide sighed, nodding grimly. The clip had passed 20 million views. There was no spinning it anymore. On the Democratic side, members didn't gloat. They simply sat back, composed, knowing the damage had already been done. Not to Trump, but to those who had let the rumor spread unchecked. Reporters in the gallery scribbled furiously, but their pens didn't chase new words. They described expressions. A clenched jaw here, a broken smile there, eyes darting anywhere but the signature phrase playing on their phones. On cable news panels, the embarrassment was just as clear. Commentators who had repeated the rumor sat rigid in studio chairs, their smiles brittle. One finally muttered, "Well, he's obviously alive." "That much we can confirm," another, cornered by co-hosts, stammered. "We only reported what people were saying." But the excuses rang hollow. The viral line had eclipsed them all. The more they tried to explain, the weaker they looked. Even late-night skeptics showed cracks. A writer admitted off-air, "We were ready to write obituaries. Now we're rewriting punchlines." And in the White House itself, aides walked taller. They knew the faces of their rivals told the story better than any press release ever could. Aides had their phones out, showing one another screen grabs of anchors caught mid-expression, looking stunned as Trump's 3 words replayed in the background. Crockett, who had sat silently through much of the storm, leaned into her microphone during a break. Calm, unhurried, she said only, "Rumors are loud, but truth is louder." We all saw it. The chamber stirred at her restraint. She hadn't needed to pile on. The silence of her opponents had already done the work. It wasn't a vote, it wasn't a declaration, but the verdict was obvious. The rumor was dead, and the faces of those who'd believed it were the gravestone. Rumor tried to speak for him, he spoke for himself. The Rose Garden was quiet, cameras humming, as Trump returned to the podium for closing remarks. He didn't storm in, he didn't wave his hands. He simply stepped forward, calm but commanding, letting the crowd's whispers settle into silence. The rumor had consumed the weekend. It had filled timelines, dominated hashtags, and hijacked headlines. But here he was, flesh and voice, standing taller than the whispers. He placed both hands on the podium, leaned into the mic, and repeated the line that had already burned through the world. "I'm still here." No flourish, no joke, no extra words, just presence. The silence that followed was thick enough to press against the walls. Reporters froze, pens suspended in midair. Photographers captured the moment, his face calm, the microphones clustered in front of him, the weight of the statement settling on every lens. On Capitol Hill, feeds lit up as the clip replayed instantly. Allies retweeted it with exclamation points. Critics hesitated, then ignored it. But no one could deny it anymore. The phrase was everywhere, looping across every screen, burying the rumor beneath the weight of his voice. He didn't explain, he didn't lecture, he didn't shout. He let the silence after his words do what the hashtags could not. End the story. And then, without waiting for applause, he stepped back, turned, and left. The podium remained, the echo of the words still lingering. The rumor, loud as it had been, had finally run into something louder. The truth. Was Trump's short, calm statement the smartest way to crush the "or is he dead" rumor? Or should he have done more? Tell me what you think in the comments. Don't forget to hit subscribe, because the next clash will be even bigger.